So one question I get asked a lot is, why would you build an API-driven application? Isn't it more work? Isn't it super hard to manage? Is it more, what's the security vulnerabilities? Well, hopefully in this video tutorial we can kind of break down what some of the barriers are to build, why you'd want to build an API-driven application, when you should build an API-driven application, and when you shouldn't build an API-driven application. Uh, we're going to touch on a few different aspects, and hopefully by the end of it you'll see the power of doing it this way, though not every app should be done in this fashion. So let's get it out of the way on when you should not build an API-driven application. The only times that I believe that you shouldn't build an API-driven application is if you don't need a mobile app, which there's a good portion of web applications out there that don't need mobile apps. And if you don't plan on opening your app up to third parties. If neither of those are true, and in reality there's lots of successful apps out there that aren't true, or maybe if you have a small API and have a few features, you don't want to build your whole application off of an API, those would be the times that you don't want to build an API-driven application. You won't see the dividends that you'd get returned if if you needed to deploy to mobile, or if you needed third parties to be involved. It does take a little bit longer to build API-driven applications, so if you're not opening up to third parties and you don't require a mobile app of any sorts, I would probably steer clear of an API-driven application. So let's dive into the goodies on when you should build an API-driven application. It's pretty much on the contrary to when you should not. You want a mobile app and you don't want to write extra code, build an API-driven application. You want ease of access and allow third parties to access a lot of your data in your application securely and efficiently, build an API-driven application. The main selling point that you can usually do is deploying to mobile and the iOS and Android app stores. Web code is so powerful, especially JavaScript, that you can make a beautiful mobile app written strictly in JavaScript. There's helper tools that allow you to access phone and hardware resources with ease. And the power of this, in which we dive into in this book, which really the whole book is about, is you have one code base and you can deploy it to many platforms. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So the app that we are building in the book is called Roast and Brew. And it's an app for coffee enthusiasts to filter out coffee shops based off of brew methods, whether they roast their own coffee. It's for coffee enthusiasts like myself. However, the structure of the code is unique, and the selling point of the code is you separate your concerns, but more importantly, you can deploy your front end to the iOS App Store, the Android App Store, and to web using the same code base. What I mean by separation of concerns is we have two repos. So we have an API repo, which is written in Laravel, and this has all of the functionality, the PHP side, the server side functionality that houses the data for our application. It allows you to filter and return. This is the endpoint that gets hit from first-party apps and third-party apps, which is really cool because we're consuming the same routes as someone who may be interested in doing something else with the data in the application. The other repo that we have is a front end, and this is Vue.js in a framework called Nuxt.js. And this is where the selling point actually resides, of being able to write this front end and deploy it to multiple platforms. If you were to intermix and have a monolith of PHP and JavaScript, you couldn't deploy it to an Android or iOS app store because they wouldn't be able to process PHP and perform the functionality. So you have your front end, which communicates via an API to your back end, no matter what platform that you're on. Now, the cool part about having this front end separate is you can install capacitor.js. So capacitor.js allows you to access phone hardware and bundles your application for deployment to the iOS and Android app stores as well as the web. You can even go as far as limiting features based on the web or whether it's on mobile within the code itself. So you still have one code base, and by limiting features, I mean, say you want to take advantage of the hardware GPS compared to the location service in the web browser. You can take advantage of the hardware and the location service depending on the platform that you're on. That's extremely powerful. Deploying to iOS and Android is not fun, especially if you have two different code bases. Once you get through the headaches of authentication and storing tokens, you really have to make a feature once, and then you just deploy it to both app stores. So what do I mean by deploying to both app stores in the web? Let's bring our web browser over. So this is roastandbrew.coffee. This is our app. You can see we have highest rated roasters with subscriptions. We have newest cafes. Now this is cool. It's a web app. It works really well. You can click on a cafe or a company, see their cafes, see what services they provide, see how many people like them. But the power of building an API-driven application with a single-page app is we have the same application in the Google Play Store and in the iOS App Store. So this all of these apps runs the exact same code base. So if I were to add a feature to the web, I would just deploy to mobile, wait for the approval process, and the feature would be there. That's when the dividends really start paying back. You're not maintaining 3 code bases or 4 if you're doing an Electron or Mac native app, or 5 if you're doing Mac, Windows, iOS, Android, and web. You can literally take the same code and compile it for any platform using the power of web tools, which you're probably already familiar with. You also don't have to learn Java, Swift, and JavaScript. I believe it's beneficial if you do know those languages and understand how they work. But for most of content-driven apps, or apps where there's lots of data being thrown around, you can do that with the same code that you already use in the web, which is amazing. So that's the big selling point on why you should build an API-driven application. Our book dives into that in depth, in detail. We go through the process of authentication, how to set up your first endpoints, the process of building a feature out, starting with the API first, moving up to the single-page app side, all the way to deploying, installing Capacitor, and getting people on your app. If you find this tutorial helpful, head over to our community. So it's community.serversideup.net. And if you have any questions, feedback, and you've purchased the book, you can ask any questions here. We'd love to help you out.